Well, what a great morning. Thank you so much for being here, all the friends and family of the people who just declared publicly that they're going to follow Christ from this day forward. And that's part of the punch of the Christian faith. Is it's not just a moment, right, where you receive something. There's a reception. There's a gift. But there are gifts all along the way. Faith is found in your feet. What these people are saying is, this is where I'm headed for the rest of my life. You know, with everything in me, I believe that I'm supposed to live this way, not that way. I want to follow him, not me, not you, not them. I want to follow him. He's my Lord. He's my master. And in that process, the transformation is amazing. The older I get, I just turned 44 on Tuesday, and found out that that's one of two places scientifically that they have shown there is an acceleration of feeling old. And so I was kind of bracing myself for that. One of the things that's interesting about getting older is the things that you didn't expect to be a problem. Like when I was a kid being anywhere from 9, 8 to even 18, I really never had any pimples or zits. Like I just never had any breakouts. And now in the last 10, 15 years, I seem to have once a month, like this kind of pimple like problem. And when Redding was born, she like looked at and poked at one when I'm like, when she's like 3, what's that? What's that? And I said, that's a zit. And so she calls them zips. You got zips, Dad. Recently though, I have found somewhat of a solve for pimple emergencies, if you have a pimple emergency. It's called the Mighty Patch. Has anybody heard of the Mighty Patch? Anybody? Yeah, the Mighty Patch, right? It's according to the advertising, it's the blemish hero. It's the blemish hero. What you do is when you have one coming on, man, before you go to bed, you just pop one of these little stickers that are kind of translucent right on your face over all the pimples. And when you wake up in the morning, they're gone. And they're like 90% effective. I mean, most of the time I wake up and there's like a sticker on my face and I remove it and the zip is gone. But I will say that a couple of times, I get up fairly early, a couple days a week, go to the gym. And there have been a couple of emergency zip problems where I've had about maybe 6 to 15 of these stickers on my face. And, I'm so tired and I don't turn all the lights on that I forget, right? I forget. So there's been a couple times I've gone to the gym and some of the people that I meet there, they're like looking at me weird. Like, dude, do you know what's on your face? Like someone came to your house last night and like played a prank on you. You have a bunch of stuff on your face. And it's interesting. It's like an interesting commentary on, showing your weakness, right? Or being vulnerable about a problem that you're having. I mean, having a blemish on your face is something that we all kind of want to hide. It's something that we don't want people to see. So we try to remedy it, but it almost defeats the purpose, right? We go out into public and people see it and they go, oh, you have a problem and you know it. And that's kind of the message today, is that we all have a problem and we know it. And there's an answer for that. And when we have that problem, we can kind of just act like it doesn't exist, or we can go to the place where we can have repair. We can go to the place where we can be whole and remade. We're in a series called The Shame Game, and I started it last week, so you can go back and catch up with us, but I don't think you need a real recap. I think that you're gonna catch on right away. We're calling this the shame game. The shame game is when we are confused about who we are. It's when we're confused about who we are. The word shame in Hebrew, it means to be confounded or confused. And Adam and Eve, when they were first created, they had no confusion. No confusion about who they were, no confusion about what they were supposed to do, no confusion about who God was, and the whole journey. And when they fall, when they sin, when they choose to do things their way instead of the way God directed them to, it says that they become ashamed and that they hide. And that means that they suddenly see themselves, and what was clear before is no longer clear. What they have done makes them believe that there's something so wrong with them that they have become unlovable to God. And this is what we do. That when we have a blemish, when there's something wrong, we hide ourselves and we don't believe we're lovable. We don't believe that God will embrace us. This played out in the first story of the scriptures with Adam and Eve, and they had what we had just talked about, and they did what they were not supposed to do, and their eyes were opened, and then they go and they hide from God, and they also cover themselves because there's something about the nature of being naked that suddenly seems like it's a problem. It suddenly opens their eyes to something's different, and they see themselves as unlovable, so they hide. God comes looking for them, and he can't find them. He asks them, "Where are you?" He never asks them, "Who are you?" He's not confused about who they are. They're confused about who they are, and that's why they hide. They run away from him. God also asks another question, if we go back and read the narrative, and you can do that in Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and 3. God also asks the question, who told you? Who told you that you were naked? Who said this to you? Where did you get this idea that you were naked? Where did you get the idea that something's wrong? Where did you get the idea that now you need to cover up? Where did you get the idea that now you need to hide from me? Where did all this come from me? I never told you to do this. Who told you that you had this problem now? Who said it to you? And what they say is that the serpent told us. The serpent lied to us. The serpent said this. They blame each other. They blame this serpent for all of these problems and all of these changes. Now, the word serpent, interestingly enough, it comes from a Hebrew word that means to hiss. But when you look at it deeper, it actually means to practice deviation or to observe signs of sorcery. Or another way to put it is to kind of seek enhancements and answers from other sources. So when the serpent comes along and they do what they're kind of living the way they should, then he hisses. It's a different source. It's a twist on reality. Ooh, maybe you should do it this way. Maybe you should act like this. Maybe you should go here. And the word hiss is also kind of a little hook about whispering. And so these lies are being planted, and they're kind of moving the first humans away from acknowledging and maintaining a superior view of the source of God and his information to moving it to a different source. This is where we get the idea for sorcery or deviation from the truth. The language actually says also that this hissing serpent, who is a different source, which really is a lie, and it comes in the form of whispers. The root word also that is put before that is a word that describes him, and it's called cunning. Or in the Hebrew specifically, it's subtle. And interestingly enough, that word is the same root word as the word to be naked. So what you have is you have some people who are naked and they're not ashamed, and you have a serpent who's a liar who is naked, but he's vulnerable. He lies to them. And throughout the process, they both become vulnerable. Someone trying to move us into a space of death, of vulnerability, of nakedness, of neediness, to kind of pull us away from what God had blessed us with is the idea that this being comes in and goes, you're never going to get that. I'm going to trick you and give you a different belief about what's true, and it's going to make you be confused about who you are and what you're supposed to do. And so in that moment, sin becomes their master. And this is what happens for us that don't choose to specifically follow Christ. When we don't specifically choose to follow Christ, when we don't give our lives to Christ, and then our faith doesn't kind of every day take a different path than it would have. That's the idea, right? Is that I would have gone here, but now I'm not going to go here. Because I'm a Christ follower and he's going that way. Because I have faith, it's not just something I say and think and feel, it's something that I do differently because of Jesus. He's a different way. But what happens when we believe the wrong sources about who we are? Sin becomes our master and we listen to it. But it never becomes our maker. It never becomes our maker. And so this is where shame plays its role. Shame, what it does to the person who now has sin as their master, but not their maker, it does this kind of nasty work to both people that are following Christ, those that aren't following Christ. Shame keeps the saint from continuing to transform. So as the person who's following Christ is stepping in Christ and they move into this direction, they might misstep. And then the hiss comes in and says, you know you're not real. You know that God doesn't really love you. You know right there you lost his affections. You know right there when you say that, when you think that, you're off. And shame hisses in our ear. And then it does this other thing to so many people. It keeps the sinner, the person who's never chosen to follow Christ, from ever becoming a saint, because they think I'm not lovable. And so essentially you have it on both sides. You have the ones that know that they're lovable, that have received the gift of God, the coverings that God gives them in Genesis chapter 3, the covering of the blood, forgiveness, new life, all of that. And they are constantly bombarded with the lies and the hissing of sin. And then you have those that haven't decided to follow Christ, but just say, you know you're not lovable. God would never love you. Don't go there, man. Don't even go to God, because when he knows you and what you did or whatever, or it's the other side, you don't follow Christ, but you think Christ's a good guy and you're walking this way and you're kind of like, my path is pretty clear. I got it all figured out. Like, I'm doing well. I don't have much sin in my life. Like, yeah, I do like things that some people aren't supposed to do, but it's nothing compared to those people that make the headlines. I'm good. I don't need God. And that's shame too, because you're confused about who you are. You're a creation of God that's fallen short of his potential. Even if you're glorying in the good things that God made, if you're not glorying in the God who made the good things, you're on the wrong path, brother. Shame, what it does is it makes us believe forgiveness cannot be had or isn't needed. With Jesus, forgiveness, listen, with Jesus, forgiveness is always offered. It's always offered. And with us, forgiveness is always needed. People don't confess to God because of shame. They don't go to God. Have you ever thought about the word confession? It's a strong word. It's a word that we use kind of incorrectly. But then when we talk about people standing before an actual judge or a magistrate and confession and the word is used, that's a powerful word, right? Confession means to agree with. The prosecutor, the judge, they're all saying, you did X. Confession means I did X. I agree with those things. God comes along and says, you got sin as your master. You're confused. You were made in my image and you're serving the wrong master. I have fixed that problem. And because you're serving the wrong master, you're walking the wrong direction. You're doing the things the creations of God were never supposed to do. Never supposed to do. And confession is, all right, I'm not supposed to do those things. I confess. I'm walking the wrong way. You're my master. But people don't go to God and actually say specifically. And this is a thing where, like, you can come forward in the church, like, publicly, and that's good. Like, that's great. And a lot of baptism is part of it is a confession. I need God. I have a sin problem. I've missed the mark. I want to live a new way. I'm separated from God because of my sin. I want to follow him. But even more, it's just the caverns of your soul, your heart, your prayer, your disposition towards God, the way you interact with God. To actually go to God and say, this is wrong. This is hurting me. And you name it specifically. What happens is people don't do that because they think if they do that they will be rejected, that they will be sent away. They think that God will, you know, tease them or, you know, publicly humiliate them, or there's a hissing. I want to take God. I feel like you could fix this. I want to bring it to you, but I feel like if I do, you'll shun me. Or I feel like what you'll do is you'll discipline me or punish me to an extent that I won't be able to. Hiss. All of these lies, all of this kind of trickery, this sorcery of not the truth. The truth is so much more compelling and needed and vibrant. But what we do is, because we won't go to God and confess, we hide. And so instead of healing, we conceal. We don't heal, so we conceal, and then we continue. We don't heal because we don't get the healing that we need and can only get from God. So then we conceal it, and then we just keep on doing it. Now, this is a personal revelation that everyone needs to find the full courage to open up to God. This is something that has to be like, maybe it's in the message today, where that threshold of going into God with that specific thing that you're afraid to show him, that sin that you have, or the sin or the past, or whatever it is you're hurting about, or maybe it was something, because shame can come because someone else told you a lie. You're not worthy because of the color of your skin. You're not worthy because of your gender. You're not worthy because you don't matter. God doesn't love you, and so you just hide. So maybe the message today, it'll make you go, okay, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna put this stuff down. I would never say this in front of all of them. I hope they don't know it. But if there is a place that I can go, if it's God, I guess I'll go to God today and see what happens when I go there. That revelation, that is something that you've got to have, to where some truth, not sorcery, some reliable source says, you can go. You can take it. You can go there. Go on in. Take it in there. You fully open up to God. Specifically, you articulate. You agree with. Now, what this is the beginning of new life. That's the beginning of new life. It's so simple. When we think about remaking a house, remodeling a house, you follow those guys on Instagram that go to people's houses who have their weeds in the dirt growing over the sidewalk and growing out of the side of the house, and they just want to make it look good, right? And the reason is when you drive by, everybody goes, that ain't good. That looks bad. So it's just open for everyone to see, and they're just okay with it. But then when they get it all fixed, whoo, man, that looks good. But for some reason, between us and God, even though he can see everything's in disarray, when he knocks on the door, can I come and help? Can I fix all this? I can fix all this, like I can fix it. We're like, he's here to fix us. No, I'm not gonna make fun of you. Like, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna lift you up. Like, I'm gonna clean it out. I'm gonna give you life. Like, I'm gonna relieve the burden. I'm gonna show you a new way. Like, all I wanna do is help. Like, knock, knock, knock. Someone's soliciting something from you. You know that God is not soliciting something from you other than to let you know that he bought your soul and freed you from death. That personal revelation, man, that is the beginning of new life. It's the process of refinement through life. And then you go continually as the weeds pop up. Here's why this matters so much. People won't come to God for help because they feel they're unlovable. People won't go to God for help. They feel they're unlovable. And then what we'll end with next week is this idea, but I'll just start to kind of skirt it. Most people's belief about God is formed by the people around them. So we start to get the answers for why we won't go. But when we go, we have found forgiveness and the love of God. Then what's happened is we've brought all of our sin to God. And instead of what we were afraid of happening, he loved us. He loved us. He wept with us. He lifted us up and he set our feet on a rock. We were in like quicksand. He forgave us our sin. He deemed us recipients of divine riches and what is called in the New Testament an inheritance that belongs to the kings of sons and daughters, and now is for us. And we are declared righteous, holy. In Psalm 40, it says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me. He heard my cry. He lifted me up out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on the rock. He gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. When we have this revelation, this transforms the way we see us. It transforms the way we see us. We start to see ourselves differently. It humbles us and gives us a godly confidence. You know that confidence and humility are actually kind of part of the same package deal when they're genuine. To be confident, to be humble is to be confident. A humble person, this is an early church father, his name is tough to pronounce. I'll let you read it, have fun. A humble person is more likely to be self-confident. A person with real humility knows how much they're loved. You ever met someone who has that confidence, and then when you get close, it's not this look at me and what I've done in my pile of accomplishments. It's I'm just like you, you're just like me. Here's the difference. I took all my junk to the Lord. He loves me. He loves me. He loves me. I know he loves me. So I can stand before you on the basis of what he's done for me. He loves me. To say those words, he loves me. To know that at the soul, at the core of our being, is to transform humans into those who reflect the glory of God. This is important when we hide our sin from God. We are blind and desperate, and we need grace and truth, but we can't really see it. And so what we do when we hide and we don't go to God to receive this type of forgiveness that he offers is we minimize our sin, right? So this is where it starts to become a real problem. When you don't know you're lovable, so you don't go and get the love you need, then you have these big problems, they don't go away. So you have to manage all that. It's like storage. It's like, we didn't get rid of it, so we'll just put it in storage. And then you got a bill for that, and you just have that in the back of your mind, or maybe you just shove it in a room, or shove it in a closet, or put it in the basement. And it's like, it's just still here because we didn't deal with it. But then what we'll do is if we kind of handle it the way we think is good enough, when other people don't manage their stuff as good as we've managed our stuff, then we minimize ours and maximize theirs. Look at them. What about them? Anybody who's judgmental has a massive sin problem and they haven't gone to the Lord. That's the opposite of humility. It's arrogance. Look at them. Look at me. I'm better than them. And actually what they're saying is, I've hid my stuff better than they have hid their stuff. Because the people who know God, the people who've been forgiven by God, who've been embraced, who've been charmed with the 10,000 charms of Jesus, the last thing they want to do is point out your sin. They want to point out that you're lovable and that sin is lying to you. The extent to which we hide what's really going on is the measure of oppression and shame that we have. The more we hide, the more we've got going on, the more we've got hidden, is the more we believe that we're not loved. And the truth is, we get healed by letting God love us. We get healed by letting God love us, man. I want you to think about that. Let him love you. No. Come on. We talk about this in our staff, right? Like one time Carmen came to me when at birthday times, and they did it this week, and they all go around and they say really, really amazing things. And we do that for every person, and I was really blessed by what was said this week at my birthday, because I thought, I've been here a while. There's nothing new. I'm probably worse now. I don't know what they're going to say. And they said things that surprised me. But one time, several years ago, people were saying things, and I had kind of a shielded disposition. And Carmen said, "You're really bad at receiving grace." And I was. Oh, it can be really hard to let somebody love you, especially if you have shame. Don't. I'm not. Yeah. Get away. Don't hug me. Don't talk to me. Don't say that. Stop looking at me, Swan. I'm not lovable. And so what shame does is it runs from what it needs. Grace. Isn't that interesting? What is grace? The undeserved gift. So the thing that makes you undeserving makes you miss the gift. The reason he's given you the gift is because you're so undeserving. He wants to fix the major problem, which is just a relationship between you and him. Shame settles for cover instead of mercy. It settles for cover. It just settles for cover up. Like you go your whole life and just cover up instead of receiving the mercy, where what mercy does, you go, stop, we're take it off. We're not covering, we're going to heal it. So we cover and walk around with a limp for the rest of our lives spiritually. And we settle for that instead of real healing. When you go to the doctor, they don't say, you know, what we can do is just put a wrap on this. Your femur's broken. We'll just wrap it up. I would rather heal it. Let's go. Let's get there. Let's get to this. Let's fix this. And then therefore shame lives on shallow aesthetics instead of genuine healing. This kind of manifests in different ways, this idea of shame. Like I mentioned, lots of work has been done on shame. Brene Brown kind of broke this down in one sense between the way shame will manifest. This happens in both men and women, kind of overlapping, but also there's some specific things. For women, a lot of times, shame will manifest. This is what we're talking about. I'm not forgivable. I'm not lovable because I've been lied to, so I hide it and I have shame. So I got to figure out a way to manage the stuff that I got instead of actually getting it managed by God. So that's shame. If I looked, it kind of manifests in perfectionism, and this happens for guys too. But what shame does is it says if I looked perfect, worked perfect, lived perfect, I can avoid criticism, blame, or ridicule. And all perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we carry around hoping it'll protect us from hurt, when all it really does is stop us from being seen and being healed. There's a difference, right, between like working hard and perfectionism. And working hard is good. And it's all about your values. I'm working hard because I care about my family. I'm working hard because I said I would. I'm working hard because I believe in this work. I'm doing all of this work. I'm prepared because it's important to do this. Shame cares only about one thing: what other people will think. That's what it's driven by. So if you make your decisions of what you're going to do and make sure it looks a certain way, and the main motivator only you can know is what other people think, then there's something underneath that you're hiding. For men, it's more. Shame is not a bunch of competing and conflicting expectations. It's just one simple idea, and this is through lots of research. Shame is to not be perceived as weak. Men just don't want to be perceived as weak. So if I got a big problem, I'm not showing you that. I got to measure up, man. There's no way. Even to God will do this. A lot of times, again, and we'll talk about this more next week, for men, when they reach out and they're vulnerable, it doesn't play out well, so they just get it reinforced. And it's not just from their dads and their coaches and their teachers. Some of the research shows that the women that are closest to men are the reason men feel the most shame. The same is true for men. Oh my goodness, are you serious? Men, you better look a certain way. I don't care what's really going on. I care what everybody thinks about the way you look. That's shame. Shame is called an epidemic in our world. There's research that was done in Boston College that was asked a question kind of about what does it take? What do women need to conform to cultural norms? What are the main things? Thousands of men and women were all asked. For women, the answer to what do we need to do to conform to cultural norms, it was be nice, be thin, modest, and always use all available resources to enhance appearance. For men, it was always show emotional control. Work is first, pursue status, and have the capacity for violence. That's what we think matters most. And the reality is that shame, when it's put into a petri dish, when we're hiding something, it grows through secrecy, silence, and judgment. The more we keep it secret, we're good, no one knows. If I don't talk about it, no one knows. Judgment, I got judged. I just got judged by somebody. Imagine if they saw everything. I'm definitely hiding this. And actually what kills shame is connection. What kills shame is what in a relational sense is empathy. I feel that, I've been there. And so the way that we kind of heal with one another is a place to be vulnerable, and we get there, and that's the way we fix our way back to each other. But first, we've got to go to God. First, we got to go to God. First, we have to go to him, and we have to go, God, I'm a mess. And what God says is, you carrying all that around, that's a heavy burden, and my burden is light. See, a version of all of these types of problems can perpetuate in our lives. I digress. You can go on and on to the problems of shame. Some of the early church fathers talk about shame as the first negative psychological experience that gave birth to the rise of the coping passions, lust, gluttony. They kind of were tricked into thinking that all these indulgences, they pose as medicine that might cure the disease at the center of our soul, that we feel true depth, there's something wrong with me. So now we have so much of a problem that we're not only hiding it, we're engaging in extremely destructive behaviors that are like a fake balm that dulls the pain for a little while. It just dulls the pain. I'm in so much pain. I got nowhere to put this. I got to hide it. And the only way I can survive is to do this stuff that really is such a radically unhealthy behavioral pattern, it kills me. And what this does is it swirls into a symphony, and the tune is, there's something wrong with you, on repeat over and over and over. We end by looking at one piece of the story that we read before we came out, Luke chapter 7. What has happened in this story is forgiveness has released this woman, Mary, who's also Mary, in Lazarus chapter 11, or in John chapter 11 with Lazarus. This is the sister of Lazarus, probably the reason that the whole family started to follow Christ. This is a really cool connection. Forgiveness releases her from the power of shame. She no longer hides. This is a woman who was obviously a prostitute. The woman in Luke 7 had an encounter before the dinner that we read about. But when she heard that Jesus was coming to town, she went and got her perfume and found him in the house. This was common in that time, that when there were certain houses, if the door was open, anybody could just come in. Anyone could come in. The guests of honor would get the table seats, and then there would be people around the room. And then if the door was open, anybody could come in, get the scraps. That's really the way it works. So if a door was open, you were generous. You with me? So the door was open. The woman walks in. The way that they would sit, table kind of low, feet behind them. Jesus is sitting like this. His feet are over to the side, and this woman just starts washing his feet, breaking for perfume on him, wiping his feet with her tears. And so she goes and she got her perfume. She goes to this house that she's allowed to go into. She gets behind Jesus where his feet are, and she fills the house with the perfume that was, before that time, a fragrance of her trade, prostitution. And Jesus took the fragrance of shame and turned it into a fragrance of freedom. But the Pharisee, who was the one who invited him in, he had it all together on the outside. And Jesus hits him right between the eyes with the parable. He hits him right between the eyes with the parable. To everybody, this woman, she was the sinful one, and the Pharisee wasn't. God goes, dude, the most important thing is the way I see you, and I know. She brought me everything. She's different. You're still hiding. N.T. Wright says the Pharisee has never come to terms with the depths of his own heart, and so doesn't appreciate God's generous love when it sits in person at his own table. That's a powerful phrase for those of us that have Jesus at the table. Sometimes we can get close enough to Jesus to make sure everybody knows that we know Jesus, but we still stay far enough away to be healed by Jesus. For Luke, true faith is what happens when someone looks at Jesus and discovers God's forgiveness. And the sign of proof of faith is his love. The woman in Luke 7 had an emotional connection with God because she brought her sin to him, and he saw her. He forgave her. She was forgiven much. So she was connected more. The only difference between her and the Pharisee was the recognition of her sin. You see, the one who's mastered by sin, who takes their sin to the master, is set free from its reign. You're set free from its reign, and you're set free from its power. Alexander Pope said, to err is human, to forgive is divine. The one place that you can go with everything you have is into the throne room of Jesus Christ and experience a divine forgiveness that you probably will never feel anything like from anyone else. Billy Graham said, God's forgiveness is not just a casual statement, it is the complete blotting out of all dirt and degradation of our past, present, and future. Pope Francis said, the Lord never tires of forgiving. It is we who tire of asking for forgiveness. Robert Mueller said, to forgive is the highest, most beautiful form of love. In return, you will receive untold peace and happiness. I want you to ask the question, and I want to ask you the question, how do you see you? Do you see you as a child of God with brokenness and sin? You can take it to Jesus and he'll clean it all up. You can specifically bring it there and he will love you. How do you see you? Let's take a minute and pray. Father, this morning we come to you in the name of Jesus, by the power of Jesus, with the permission of Jesus. That it is because of you that we can enter in, that you've called us sons and daughters, that you have offered a way into communion with you where, despite everything the world around us tells us, when we go to you, we receive love. When we go to you and we've done horribly wrong, you stay emotionally connected to us. You lift us up. We think you're going to knock us down, but you don't knock us down, you lift us up. You help us. So, Father, today, in the name of Jesus, whether it be now or later, we wish to bring to you everything we've got and ask you to do what only you can do with it. We ask that you would protect us from the whispers of the liar. We ask that we would run to you with our sin and feel your love in a new way. We love you and thank you in Jesus' name.